Welcome, dear audience, here at KTH Innovation, and also welcome to the audience that are live streaming or that is live streaming on YouTube. Welcome to KTH Africa Day's second lunch seminar. Before I introduce you to the speakers today, I would like to just mention a few words about KTH Africa Days. KTH Africa Days is an opportunity to share KTH vision and strategies for increasing our work and collaboration in and with our African partners. We would like to showcase the diverse activities in Africa, including KTH Global Development Hub, to our colleagues, students and partners. Excuse me. Our primary objective is to inspire and forge connections between our researchers and partner institutions, students, and impactful projects. Before we start with the presentation, I would also like to mention the initiative KTH in Africa community. So we have some posters with the QR code that we have in this venue and also on the toilet. So you can just see, scan the QR code and read a little bit more about it. And then you will also come to the registration if you would like to be a part of our KTH in Africa community. And the ambition of the African community is to bring together colleagues and faculty members, our students and alumni, and to interested in collaboration related to Africa. We want to share information and exchange experiences from our mutual collaboration between African universities and KTH. So, with that said, now I would like to not fall down the stage and introduce you to my two colleagues, and it's Professor Francisco Javier Vilaplana, Fran, I just learned, and Associated Professor Fredrik Gröndahl on the topic on KTH Food and Blue Ocean. Francisco's research deals with the biochemistry of complex carbohydrates, which are one of the fundamental building blocks in our life. And since November 2022, you are the director of KTH Food, a new research center for sustainable and healthy food systems, which aims to engage and align the education, research, and outreach competences at KTH toward a sustainable and healthy food system. And Fredrik, you is head of Blue Food Center, was it? Yeah. He changed the title just before we went on the stage. That's why I'm hesitating. And your research is focusing on the sustainable use of marine resources for food, feed, chemicals, and energy. The work is focused on the development of methods for evaluating the process chains for sustainable perspectives. And during the last years, you have been in charge of the macroalgae work in the Baltic Sea region project Submarine, right? And in Africa, you are now engaged in the development of seaweed cultivation in the project Blue Ocean Sea Farm that you and KTH colleagues having in Kenya, and together with Kenya Marine and Fishery Research. And we will soon learn more about this, right? So I will now leave the floor to Francisco, who will start, and Francisco will need to leave at 1. So if we have questions, we will take that after his presentation. And then after Freddy's presentation, we can have a little bit more discussions for the ones who can actually stay. So we will have just a short leg stretcher at 1 when you are leaving. And the ones who also have to leave for seminars and so on, you can also leave then. But please stay and we can continue for another 15-20 minutes discussion with Fredrik. Thank you. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, Erika, for your introduction, and good afternoon to everyone. It's very nice to be here this week and being able to present to you KTH Food. As Erika mentioned, is a new research center that was launched at KTH in 2022 that aims for the transformation of the food systems towards more sustainability and health. These are the two key areas of the center. I'm going to give you some snapshots of the thematic areas that we are doing at the center, and I will be very keen to hear from you and to find which kind of collaborations we can find in the different thematic areas, because I think that's what the purpose for today. But first of all, I want to present why do we need to transform the food system. Currently, the food sector, or the overall food system, from production, consumption, logistics, waste, etc., is one of the main contributors to environmental impacts and to the planetary boundaries. So here I can show you some numbers from the United Nations. It contributes actually 1/4 of the global greenhouse gases emissions comes from the food system. 50% of the land use is actually devoted to food, and actually water, 70% of the global freshwater withdrawals are related to agricultural. And that's only some of them. If we talk about contamination, eutrophication, then the impact of the food system is even higher. So we really need to oversee the way we produce food. And this is some numbers from the Swedish context. It's actually the third largest industry in Sweden, although it doesn't look like that sometimes. Based on investments in research. I have my quote here. But you can see here the revenues, the exports, etc. One of the things that's actually quite interesting from the food system in Sweden is that Sweden is considered as a very large innovator sector in many areas, in IT, in materials, in energy, but food, actually, when you look at the indicators, is not so high. And that's why Fredrik and I are here. We're trying to really highlight the importance of food and food innovations and food tech, and to really raise the bar in the Swedish context. And the third area I wanted to mention here is that, of course, we all eat. We just did it just a few minutes ago, and it has a huge impact on our health and on our well-being. And that is related actually to the structure of the food that we eat. That is actually one of my most dear topics in my research, is to understand food structure, food chemistry, and how that impacts the way we digest and absorb and utilize these nutrients. And you can see in Western countries, we have changed from a diet which was originally very structurally complex, raw materials, a lot of whole grains, vegetables, which had very good things. It actually enabled a slow digestion process and a prolonged release of nutrients. And through this westernization of our diets, we've changed this original diet towards more processed, structurally simple, with easy digestion and fast release. Basically, we need to learn how the different food structures actually impact the way we digest them and utilize them, because then it gives us a lot of tools on how we can modify the production systems to make it more healthy and tasty, related to the structure, and also sustainable. So, going now to the vision and mission of the center, as I mentioned, this center originated a couple of years ago. The idea is we want to be one striving research environment for a sustainable, resource-efficient, and fair food system. And we look at the entire value chain, basically from, as I say, from production, logistics, consumption, transport, etc. And we want to have a huge impact on health and well-being. One of the important things of KTH Food, and actually I think it's very important to translate it to the African context, we can talk about that later, is that we do not only want to provide technical solutions, but we need to integrate the environmental, the social aspects, so environmental and social responsibility, but also business models. It needs to be economically viable. So what we aim with this center, first of all, as Erika mentioned, we want to engage the community of researchers and teachers at KTH that actually are interested in food systems. But then, of course, we are a technical university. We want to offer these technical and conceptual tools that will enable this transformation of the food system. We cannot do this alone. We need to engage. That way we're here. We want to do it with collaborations, not only in Sweden, but also internationally. And we are in KTH Innovation, so we definitely need to position KTH as an innovation hub for food tech in this area of sustainable and healthy food systems. So that's in short our mission and vision. We have identified 4 different research areas that I will highlight here briefly, and then I will go giving some highlights of them. First of all, we have sustainable food production, which, the name says it all, is how we produce food. value chains and consumption, so to bridge the production and the consumers. We want the food system to be circular, so it's very important to manage waste and side streams. And finally, of course, we want that these food products that we are designing or we're creating, this new food system, food products are actually healthy. So connection between food and health is very important. So some highlights on the first research area, some of the ideas that we're looking at is how can food be produced in cities, for example, because again, KTH is based in Stockholm, so we want to make Stockholm as a hub of urban food production, but also the connections between the local and peri-local networks, and also organic food. Municipal food planning is very important, particularly again in connection with, in this case, Stockholm City, and basically circular flows of resources. And I will talk about that also when I talk about the circularity. And I will also touch some points about the Blue Food Center, although Fredrik will mention it later. But KTH is the host of this large national center called Blue Food, which basically covers the production of blue food, basically food that is produced in the seas. But I will not talk much about it because Fredrik will later on mention this. The second theme that we have identified is value chain management and consumption. You can see there also the theme leaders, but if you have any questions related to this topic, please ask me and I will connect you with the relevant people. So here we want to study from both a quantitative and a qualitative way the different value chains. So how would, because we know that now the food system is completely globalized, we get food from different locations in the world, but also locally. So how do these different value chains look like? How we can optimize them from a qualitative and a quantitative way? Other examples, for example, to how we can do interventions in the consumers to increase the consumption of sustainable food products, and also, for example, like smart storage solutions in the fridge. So how we can integrate digitalization, for example, in the whole value chain to really minimize the impact of the system. The third topic is food security and circular processes. And here we are looking at different perspectives. One is very, very direct. So we know that we are actually producing, we're throwing away almost 1/3 of all the food that we produce. So what can we do with it? This is a technical solution. We are designing different processes. For example, think that when we're making flour from cereals, 1/3 of the whole grain actually now goes to feed. But there's a lot of very nice nutrients, proteins, dietary fiber that we are not getting in our diets. So how we can design different processes to really get out these nice fibers from these side streams in agriculture and put them back as food products. This is just one example. You can think about, when you make juice, when you make äppelmust in Sweden, which is very popular. Again, all the fiber that goes to biogas, how we can use it to make it actually food ingredients that are healthy and nutritional valuable for us. A second strategy is related to food security. So also we know that there are a lot of pests that cause a lot of diseases in plants that produce food, or also fishes. So how can we move from chemical-based pesticides to, for example, use biological tools to basically control the different plagues that affect both production of food in plants but also in animals. So to move from chemical solutions to biological solutions. And then the last area is this functional food products and health. The idea is, of course, to produce new food products. One source could be, for example, these side streams that I was mentioning before, but also new ways of producing foods by cells. Cellular agriculture is an example. But we also want to make these foods that are actually healthy. It's very important for us that these new foods are actually not only are sustainable, but also healthy. So we can make functional foods if we can design these new functional foods, and how do these foods interact with our bodies. So one hot area in research that we are exploring right now is the interaction of foods, for example, with the gut microbiome. So we know that we have more bacteria in our bodies than actually human cells. So, and basically, the food can really have a huge impact on this bacteria because it's the source of energy. And also linked to that, how can we personalize our diet based on our basically motivations, on our genetic material? So not only have personalized medicine, but have actually also personalized nutrition that can actually act as preventive medicine in these cases. So this is the 4 areas. I went very quickly and gave you some highlights, but just thinking, and when I was invited by Erika, I was thinking, how can we maybe bridge to, because I mean, as far as I know, and well, Fredrik will explain now with some collaboration projects with Africa, but we really would like to engage. And some ideas that just came into my mind was like, you know, if you think the first slide that I was mentioning about the impact of food, one of the main impacts is actually biodiversity. How can we actually use the nice biodiversity of African sources to produce these new healthy food products? Also, how we can help to mitigate food losses and food waste in the whole system. That's, I think, another area that is very interesting, thinking about this third I mentioned before. 1/3 of the food that we produce doesn't reach the consumer. Then linking what I also mentioned in the beginning, that we do not only want to provide technological solutions, but we want to also consider the sustainability and the social implications. So how can we contribute together towards these sustainability assessments of both the production and distribution systems? And finally, of course, business models and innovation is critical. So how can we work together to create these new business models and innovation strategies for the food system? And that was it. So I will be really happy to hear from you. You have any ideas, questions, and looking forward to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Am I? Yes, I'm on. Okay, thank you so much. And I will like to let you raise questions. So Regina, if you are ready with the microphone, any questions from the audience? And Levi, maybe you can also see if we have questions from YouTube. Anyone? Okay, so maybe I may start, and then if you feel inspired, just raise your hand, okay? So, you know, I'm working at KTH International Relations Office, and I'm responsible for partnership and mobility in and with Africa. So, of course, and also due to the day and the theme of KTH in Africa, I'm very interested in the relationship and the network and so on with Sweden and Africa and KTH and our partners. So, how would you say that Africa can contribute to a sustainable and healthy food system?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is some of the key things that I wanted to maybe engage with you in the discussion. Like, I think, again, thinking about the biodiversity of African sources, I think that's a very interesting. Based on the ecosystems that we have in Africa, you have such a big diversity. Also, I was very curious with this is some research that I've read that was done from one of my colleagues in the US, but actually investigating diets in Africa, that they are, again, so rich and so diverse that the impact on the microbiome, again, because I'm very fascinated by this connection food microbiome. If you compare the microbiomes from African populations and with the Western ones, they are the African ones are so much more diverse than the Western ones. So I think that there is such a gap that we can actually learn from how this diversity of foods can actually can be extrapolated, I guess, to the Swedish system. So that's one of them. Food losses I already mentioned, but I think when I was reading the Rwanda strategy, one of the things that was actually quite interesting, it was a lot of talk about improving technological solutions, but not so much about sustainability there, and not so much about business models, and that needs to be intertwined. So that's something that I think we could definitely develop together. So how can you develop the technical solutions hand in hand with the sustainability assessments and with the business models? So I think this is some of the areas that it would be very nice to probably explore.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you. And second question is, what can Sweden contribute in collaboration with African countries to the transformation of the food system towards sustainability and health?
I think what we can provide here is access to infrastructure, like for some of the, for example, when we look at food, and this is again going back to my specialty, we can see the molecular level, we can see different interactions, and it would be very nice, and this is also a question that I'm really curious about. How do these new sources, these biodiverse sources of foods, how do they look like at the molecular level? How do they translate into the way that we digest them? So that's something that we could provide in collaboration. I remember when I was master thesis student, we have here at KTH, we had a lot of collaborations with Africa back then, and there was a lot of mobility from there to here, and vice versa. About, in that case, it was not food, it was materials, so sustainable materials, moving from plastics to bio-based alternatives. And again, it was about utilizing the resources that were there, but maybe utilizing the infrastructure that is available here. So this could be one of the ways. And also, this problem-based solving that we have trying to put in our education, I think it will be very valuable to basically co-create together these new solutions that are applicable in the countries. So this is some of the things that pop into my head when I think about it.
That's great. Thank you. Are there any questions now coming from you? Or we should...
Ooh.
Nope. So we should maybe leave the floor then to Fredrik.
Okay. Well, thank you.
I think you will still stay with us for some time, and
yes.
then okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for inviting me to have this talk. I've been working in Africa, not so much, but a little. I'm a marine biologist and an oceanographer in my background, and we started already in the mid-80s to build up a marine station on the island of Inyaka outside Maputo. So we were pioneers there with support from SIDA. It was called SAREC during that time. And this collaboration is still going on, so it's one of the longest that have been going on. And then I've been working in South Africa and also in Morocco and in Egypt and now lately in Kenya. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about a project that we think will develop into actually a business, in a new business model. So the title is Blue Ocean Seafarm, a seaweed initiative in Eastern Africa, Kenya. But I would like to start here because this, the history and the interest of seafood, and we had a big project that was financed by Formas that was called Seafarm here, that I was the project leader for. And during that project, we started to learn how to cultivate seaweed or kelp in Swedish water. And we established a sea farm on the Swedish west coast, and we were the first one doing this, and this was back in 2014. And one interesting result in this was that it worked very well. No one had tried it before, and suddenly we just found, wow, our waters are perfect to cultivate seaweeds. And with the seaweed, then we learned, okay, we could cultivate it. Could we do something about it? And we had that possibility in the Sea Farm project also. And we aimed for feed, for animals, food for humans, but also materials. And this, especially here at KTH, we have a long tradition of working with materials. Instead of plastics, we could do maybe bio-based plastics, textiles, etc. So we have been working very much with that. So seaweed are a complement to the forest. It's like we worked in a biorefinery concept, and we used the biomass from the seaweeds. Similar like what you could do from forest. And we also had researchers here from KTH that have been working a lot with forest and agriculture before, but they were now introduced to a new biomass. So one of the lowest hanging fruits here is, of course, food for humans, because this is necessary. You could say that the indirect and direct impact of food on climate change, you could say more or less 50%. That is connected with food. And now we are more than 8 billion people on the planet, and we are going toward maybe 11 billion people in the near future. And food is essential. We need to produce much more food, and we need to find new protein sources. And you could find these protein sources. You could find it in insects, for example, new food. And you could make a choice eating insects, nice if you want. But you could also find the new vegetables, the algae, the seaweeds, that also could contain large amount of protein. So we are now standing in something called the protein shift. We have to we cannot just produce proteins from chicken and cows and things like that. We also need to find it in the other sources of protein. And this must be in a sustainable way. That is very important. And we could show that to cultivate seaweeds in the sea is actually one of the most sustainable things you could do and have a very low climate impact if you compare with traditional agriculture on land. So this is a complement to land-based agriculture. Seaweed is also something that humans have been eating for a very, very long time. And actually, we go back to Africa now. We originate, all of us, from Africa, from southern Africa, on the beaches there. And maybe you have heard about that you eat things from the sea that will develop your brain and your nervous system. And one reason for us being humans are probably because we were eating seafood once upon a time. And to catch a fish, it's very difficult and things are moving, but seaweeds are there. You could, with low tide, you could go and pick them and eat them. And most likely we are humans because we were eating a lot of seaweed once upon a time during our evolution. So we are tightly connected to the sea and to eat seafood. Anyway, from this sea farm project, we also then started a consortium, and this was another format. They announced centers for food. And then we organized ourselves with 8 academic partners to create the Blue Food Center for Future Seafood. And this was something that we now have, and it's here at KTH. And I'm the director for it. And our long-term vision for this was to unlock the enormous potential lying in production of nutritious food from Swedish water and make Sweden a leading supplier of attractive and sustainable produced seafood. This is also very critical now because of this unsecure world that we have, that Sweden must be more self-sufficient in food production. We are importing more than 75% of our seafood, and also other food sources are imported. We are very, very vulnerable in if we will have a crisis in the country. So this is what we would like to do, or doing in the Blue Food Center. And who are we? Yeah, this is our collaboration. We are 8 academic partners. It's a national center. It's all over Sweden, both on the west coast and on the east coast, but also up north in lakes. So it's not only food from salty water, but also from fresh water. And here you could see the partnerships. We are more than 70 partners now in the Blue Food Center, and more municipalities and cities wants to join the Blue Food Center because it's a big interest for this. And we have the whole process chain, as you mentioned. We have the primary producer, we have the process industry, and finally the ones selling the seafood on the shelves, like ICA and Coop and IKEA and others are also now getting involved in this. So this is what we are going to do for hopefully for 8 years, and we have been into this now for a little bit more than 2 years. So this is the Seafood Center. Anyway, now I will tell you a little bit how we also want to learn more working together in Africa. And we had some local initiative down in Africa that invited us down there 2 years ago. Actually, it started during the pandemics, but then it was impossible to travel there. But a bit later I went there, and I had to spend some time in the Ebola room at the airport in Mombasa before we were allowed into the country. But anyway, finally we came there, and I had a student with me from KTH, Anton, who was on a minor field study, and we wanted to make an inventory how seaweed cultivation is taking place in Kenya. They do it a lot in Tanzania, on the island of Zanzibar, a lot of this. But in Kenya, this is kind of new, but they have the same opportunities. The first thing was where I went out with a very small little plane sitting there. It's actually really crazy, and we were investigating the coast here from above, and this is how it looks, the coral reefs and then the long beaches. The area is here. It's in the south of Kenya, very close to the Tanzanian border in this Kavale district here. And the small little map here is also showing local seaweed farms that are there, that we wanted to understand how this business is developing. So you could see here the name of the seaweed farms, and you could see Mombasa is the main city there. And then, we went there. We wanted to understand how this is being developed in Kenya. And this is just a slide showing how it looks. You could see all the seaweeds that they are cultivating there. And they are using the same methods that they are used in Zanzibar, on the island of Zanzibar. And it's also a lot of the owners or the buyers of this seaweed biomass down in Kenya are also the same ones that in Zanzibar in Tanzania. So they are connected here. This is how it's done. It's actually not as we do it in Sweden. We understand the whole life cycle, and we could sort of do seeds, small seeds, and use that on our ropes. But here they are using like seedlings, like small pieces of the seaweed that is tied up on ropes and then put in the water. And when it's high tide, they are floating in the water, but with low tide, they will be on the bottom. We have also ideas here to do this on hanging, so they don't go into the bottom, because then it will be less heat in the water and they will survive better, and we will have a better production. So what is happening here is that we have mature, this is just this species of seaweed. They take two small pieces of the seaweed, put them on ropes, and then they put them out in the water. And then when you harvest, it gets into to dry, and they use the sun here to dry the seaweed and then pack them in big package. This is just the different seaweeds, and it's a global industry, and the most cultivated thing we have in the world is actually in the sea, is actually seaweeds. Maybe you thought it was salmon or something like that. No, it's something called Saccharina japonica. It's a big kelp species that they cultivate in Korea, in China, and so on. And then it's Ecoema, it's a tropical species. It comes from Indonesia, the Philippines, Indonesia, and this is one of the species that are also cultivated in Kenya and Tanzania. And also this one, Gracilaria and some others. So this, you could see. And there is an underproduction of seaweeds in the world. So there's actually a demand for producing more seaweeds, and we need seaweeds in the future. So our student here, Anton from KTH, who made his fine minor field study down here, he started to understand how this is connected. So you have the production here with this Ecoema seaweed. We have the farmers who's doing that. There is about 500 households there, and they could produce about 160 tons of raw dried seaweed in 2021. This is also in collaboration with the Kenyan Marine and Fishery Research Institute, KEMFRI. And then see what are produced here. And it's raw dried seaweed, so it's very basic. It's just the biomass. They do some soap and some other things, but mainly it's just to pack it, dry it, and then send it away. And then you have baling and storage. There is another cooperative that help the farmers to do this. And then this is exported up to the Western countries, like United States, France, China, and so on. Denmark is a big taking care of the seaweed. And then from there is use in industries in many different ways, and they do all kind of things with the seaweed. A lot goes into food, and you are eating seaweeds every day. When you look at the package and you will see E number 407, you know that it will be seaweeds coming from Kenya or Tanzania or somewhere else. Karayen that stabilize the food. Anyway, we try to understand how this works, and One thing is that there is a lot of middlemen connected with this, and our idea now, together with Swedish investors down in Africa, is to create a blue ocean sea farm, similar what we have been doing from the sea farm project that we had here in Sweden. We have started a startup that is called Nordic Sea Farm with 15 employees now here in Sweden. And last year we were the food tech company of the year and so on. So it's growing, the seaweed demand. And what we could do is to this is a little bit how the costs are distributed here. Transport is of course very important. Labor is very cheap down there. They are not paying the ones who are doing this, the households that are mainly women doing this work. They still earn quite, they earn but not so much, and it's kind of a hard work. You could have sea urchin and you get stung, then you could get infections and so on. And then you have all these middlemen. So they collect this, they sell it for a very low price. It's packed and then sent to the Western countries through 4 or 5 different middlemen there in Kenya. What we would like to do is to look at a system that they have done on Madagascar, is to cut the middleman here. Help the women, the collective there, so they get more pay, better salaries, and then we will get the contacts directly up here in the Western world, you could say. And then they just skip the middleman, actually. So there we have now plans to do this, and we are going down somewhere here during spring again and see how this works, and we will see how we could do this in the best way. So that's just a little bit about seaweed production in Kenya, that it's in its startup now. But we hope that it will be developed. And there is definitely a need of this seaweed biomass in Sweden and in other places. So could we just do this in a better way? This could be a very fruitful collaboration between Africa, in this case Kenya and Sweden. So with that, I would like to thank. This is what we do. It's financed by Formas, the Blue Food Center. So. And the district of Västra Götaland. But thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much. You can still stay with us for a few minutes.
Yes.
And it's so interesting, really. A lot of questions popped up in my head, but I would again turn to the audience and see if you have any comments. And also, Levi, did you manage to get any comments from the... Oh no, they are so passive on YouTube. Please come in with questions. So, any here having questions? Yes, Regina, you can give the microphone to the lady.
So I have a question regarding how sensitive the kelp or seaweed is to pollution. Like looking at the Baltic Sea, it's quite in bad shape. Mm-hmm. So how sensitive is it to pollution, basically? And at this center, are you looking at marketing the seaweed as food, like in a direct way, or more as it's used now in other products?
Good questions. We could start with the pollution. Seaweeds, they take up pollution if they are cultivated where you have polluted water. So for example, if you have heavy metals, cadmium and things like that, you cultivate that, it will be taken up. And I mean, the same happens if you have land agriculture. If you cultivate around Stockholm here, there could be severe pollution in the soil actually taking up. So you really need to know where you are cultivating it. Our seaweed now is cultivated on Swedish west coast, where we don't have so much problem with this type of chemicals. So all of us, they have under the thresholds for cadmium and heavy metals. In the Baltic Sea, it would be probably the same, because a lot of the pollutants in the Baltic Sea is located in the sediment, and it's down there where you have the pollution. In the free water mass, you will not have that much of a problem. But and it's also so that this is a low trophic level. Do you understand that? So it's a large body of biomass. So if you have a polluted pollution there, it will be diluted into the biomass. The problem is when you go up the food chain, you will have more and more concentration of pollutants. So it's not actually you could cultivate seaweeds in the Baltic Sea, especially maybe some green algae, for example. Then you asked about if we are using food directly. Yes, we do. But you will never start to eat seaweed just like one dish of seaweeds. It's mostly you could do small starters and so on. And I don't know if you did see the Nobel Prize dinner this year. We had seaweed served there. They came from our company, startup company, Nordic Sea Farm, and we have been there for 3 years now serving seaweed. So it's very popular among chefs and high cuisine or whatever you call it, like Fotografiska and so on are doing this. So there is a lot of invention of what you could do, find new ways of eating seaweeds, and also find, maybe now we are very inspired by Asia and using, seaweeds from like Asia, we do in Asia, but it's also nice to do French cousin from France or from Sweden, new ways of dealing. And this is experiments and innovation to find these new things. But seaweed will also not only be an additive, I was talking about the E407, it's an additive, a stabilizer or a taste enhancer, you could have it. But we also think that you could put it in bread, for example. You could have quite substantial amount of seaweed in bread. And we have a hard bread now that havsknäcke, that is seaweed in. But bread is a perfect example. You could have it in meatballs. Maybe you could have half with meat and half of seaweeds. So we don't need to be afraid of processing, mixing food. And that will be important in the future. And then, of course, then you will use just half amount of meat and the other thing comes from seaweed. That's a good achievement, I think. So it's not either black or white. Yeah. I don't know if I answered your question.
I think we will continue soon, but we will have to leave. Have to let Francisco leave. So I would actually like to give you a small gift.
Thank you very much.
So I go from this direction. So,
Thank
and
you
I
so
didn't
much.
have a pocket for my microphone, so I do like this. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me here today. So you have my contact if you want to know more about what we do. So thank you.
Thank you, and good luck with future projects
Thank
and
you.
research.
Bye.
Thank you. Yes, so you can leave the microphone to Jocke. Okay, I saw there was some more questions. If there is anyone else that have to rush away to lectures, you can do that. And then, okay, so we have one question here, and then one question behind. So, yes, please.
Yes, thank you. I'm Anna Björnberg-Mikkelson from Aalto University in Finland. Nice to be here, and thank you very much for a very interesting and inspiring presentation. Both you, Fredrik, and also Francisco. Thank you. This was very interesting. I don't really have a question, but I have a sort of comment or thought, and that is that first of all, I think here you are sort of touching upon so many important matters, right? We are talking both food security, global health, diseases or not diseases, but also malnutrition, climate change, and so on. And there was Francisco mentioned the waste that we actually use so little of what, for example, comes from agriculture. We should make more use of it, or what you're saying now about kelp and seaweed. I think there we have a real challenge for all of us to actually see that we have a kind of recipe, and not talking so much about medicine, but proactively, affect or give a sort of input to our own health and global health for all of us. And it's out there. It seems like this is not something we need to spend a lot of money on, but it's there. It's in the seas. We need to keep on developing these interesting initiatives. So, very inspiring. Thank you both.
Thank you.
It was fun that you mentioned Aalto, because we have a collaboration there, but that's seaweed and art. where Julia Lohman is her name, and she has something called Department of Seaweeds, and that is at Aalto University, and it's art using seaweeds to do lamps and masks and clothes and things like that. So we are involved in any use of seaweeds. That's good for us because we are producing seaweeds, and it's good that it will be used. And the nice thing is that you could use it for so many different things. But food is, of course, the lowest hanging fruit. And then, I mean, this health aspect is not so easy. How could you, evaluate something from if it's healthy or not? And I actually went to Japan this before summer, and we went up to Okinawa, and we visit a small village there, Oigami it's called, where one of these blue zones. And you just try to understand why do they become so old there? And there are other blue zones, like on the island of Sardinia or the Ikaria Island in the Mediterranean, and Nicoya in Costa Rica. And there they have a high percentage of people becoming more than 100 years. And there are things, food is one that connects them, and that's interesting, that you have healthy food. And part of it is from the sea, definitely, and also, but it's or Mediterranean food or something like that. Then it's daily work, and that you move in a, they were just working up, even when they are 90, 100, they are still working, but not on a high level, not exercising or anything like that, but daily life working. And then it's the social context, that you have a cohort of people that you like and follow you through life. And that seems to be the recipe. So we just have to do that. So then we'll be more than 100 years. Yeah, well, it doesn't necessarily have to be seaweeds, but it could also be other things. But I mean, it's interesting how this research trying to find, but it's a combination of many things, and then a little bit of genetic luck on top of that.
So we had, yes, please, we had more questions.
Good afternoon. My name is Aki. I was actually following on YouTube, and I wanted to ask Francisco a question, but I didn't type it in, and I just thought I would ask afterward. But I can ask my question anyway. It's about, in all of this, I think, Fredrik, you have given a very interesting presentation. And of course, it left a lot of thinking in the mind about many things also that are also connected to it. From the angle that I look at it from, the ethical side of things and the political side of things. We know how Africa is, and we know the politics in Africa, and of course we know the nature of leadership. And you alluded to something when you were talking about how the middlemen sort of cut off or reduce the margin that the local producers can make. So I was wondering if the end users, that is the investors, if there is any kind of moral dilemma that they feel as a result of their own investment in these sort of spaces in which, so to speak, anything goes. You know, you can practically get away with anything, and you can do anything, you know, in this sort of context. So do they sort of think about this sort of thing? And then when I looked at the broad objective of your project, which is to unlock the enormous potential lying in production of nutritious food from Swedish waters and make Sweden a leading supplier of attractive and sustainably produced seafood. Your reference point is in Kenya.
Okay. I mean, now it's more a storyline where we started with the sea farm project and the seaweeds, and then we had the Blue Food Center, that is a Swedish center. Then on side of that, we are now working with Kenya. It's more like another type of project, and I think I mean, we could see the demand of seaweed is growing. It will be more and more important, and we need more and more production of seaweed. And if Kenya now wants, and they seem to like that, to be also a producer of seaweed in the future, we could help to connect with our customers and things here in Sweden, using the seaweed here, and in that way also improving for the farmers, the local farmers, the women down there, to provide them with a better and more, call it sustainable production than they have today, when they get very, very little paid for seaweed that is so valuable when it comes up here to Denmark or Sweden. So that is our intention, and we have a close relationship down in Kenya with the local women and the cooperatives that are there, and we also have Swedish people living there on a permanent basis down in Kenya. So we are trying to be as ethical as we can here, and we have looked a little bit on this Madagascar project I mentioned, and there is France working, and he had done the same in Madagascar. He's been very successful. So the salaries are now up to $500 a month, actually, and that is quite a good salary in Madagascar. And he have done this in a very successful way. I don't know if we will manage to do it or so, but we are at least trying, and it seems like there are possibilities to do that. And also have established maybe more efficient farms and so on down there in Kenya.
I guess in essence, I'm just trying to point your attention to the political side of things, that is equally political as well as ethical side of things, that are equally as important as this technical side of things. Because I know that you have the technical expertise in terms of developing this wide range, of things. But there are also political side to it that can enhance the value and the quality of the work that you do, because it is very important. But of course, knowing that and managing that in the context of local and international contexts is very important in the project. I guess that's my contribution.
Definitely so. And I mean, the best, of course, would be if you have kind of a biorefinery and you could establish it actually in Kenya, and they could make more of the increase the value chain of the biomass and produce more products locally. That would be the best. Now they do a soap, quite not so advanced, but still they do something at least. But maybe more things could be done. And it doesn't always have to be very fancy technology and things like that. You could do it, maybe find better ways to work. But we collaborate with the locals.
Thank you. So, any other questions from the audience or YouTube, Levi? No? Okay, YouTube keeps quiet. Are we done here? Okay. So, I have just one additional question, and it seems like this is an important complement, right, in the future food chain and so on. So what would you say about the future and the importance of algae and other seafood, like globally? Yeah. And maybe also African, there are a lot of coastal nations there.
Yeah, and since I'm not biased, no, but I mean, what we have to be aware of is that we have a blue planet, and the planet is 71% of the planet is the sea. And we have also land, but on land we have deserts, glaciers, I mean a lot of land we cannot use, and then we are 8 billion people. So on land we are destroying very much now. In ecology we use something called carrying capacity. We have reached it on the land ecosystem. One species here, humans, are using like 45-50% of the primary production that is taking place on land for our animals and for ourselves. And the rest is for all the other beings that are on land. So you could see that it's very, and you could see it with the loss of biodiversity and things like that. In the sea, on the other hand, we are under 1% of this at the primary production. We have misused the oceans very much also by fishing big, cod and swordfish and tuna fish and things like that, and depleted the ocean of this predatory fish that we like to eat. So more fishery is not the solution. We need to go into the low trophical level, like mussels and and algae that you don't feed actually. Like salmon, you have cages and you feed them with adder fish. So it's not that sustainable either. So that the big potential is to cultivate mussels and algae, low trophic level, and there you could increase it with hundreds and hundreds of times the production of today. And this will be, I will say that if we want to have a sustainable development of this planet and an economical growth, and we need to take care of the oceans in a good way with aquaculture, and also put energy systems out at sea, using it but in a sustainable way. And we are only in sometimes we talk about a blue revolution taking place now, and we have just started. But this is an essential part of our future, our collective future. Take care of the sea in a better way. And we haven't done that yet.
Yeah.
So
Are there any risks with this kind of cultivations for the coastal or for the sea?
Yeah, the thing is that actually when you cultivate seaweeds and harvest them, it's actually beneficial for the ocean. We have done a lot of studies and also doctoral theses on this. And actually when you cultivate the seaweeds, they will be fed on the nitrogen and phosphorus that are available in the sea. And we have put a lot of it out there. It's eutrophicated. So they take it up and you harvest, you take it up on land. So you are actually helping the sea a little bit from remediation of nitrogen and phosphorus. And then of course they're also taking up carbon dioxide. And then depending what you do with it on land, if we don't eat it or we eat it, it will be released again. But you could do materials that are long-lived, and then there will be a little carbon trap there. We also have another project that I didn't mention today that is called Sea Feed, where we're looking into cows and sheep feeding on algae, and that reduces the methane release from these animals. And there you could use it directly in fighting a little bit of the climate gases that comes out from our cattle and so on. So there are so many opportunities here, so it's open for a lot of new innovative ideas.
Yeah.
So that's, yeah.
Thank you for sharing all this research and projects and your knowledge with us. So just a quick, if you have another one, otherwise we will, another question, otherwise we will close this seminar. And yes, so I would like to give you also some of our campus honey and some other things for you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
being here with us at KTH Africa Days.
Sustainable.
And, yes. And a round of applause for Fredrik.
Thanks.
Thank you.